Well, President Obama is taking a part of his very busy day here in New York to host a working lunch with African heads of state. It is, of course, the second most populous continent in the world, where in some areas most people live on less than $2 a day. The president of the African Development Bank came to New York to ask for more resources and to meet with some investors here. ADB President Donald Kaberuka is here with me now. Thank you so much for making time here. You've been speaking on Wall Street. You've been speaking to investors. How are you encouraging interest in lending in the region?
Listen, thank you very much for this opportunity. Until the crisis set in last year, the African economies had been doing quite well. For almost a decade, the majority of the economies were growing at about 6–7%, unheard of for almost 40 years. Real per capita incomes were increasing and poverty was declining. Now, since the crisis, these gains have been reversed. Now, for countries dependent on exports such as minerals, the shock has been bigger. And so what we are saying to governments around the world, in the OECD countries, is let us work together to make sure there's not a major setback, because Africa is 1 billion people and they can be part of the stimulus for the world economy.
At the UN today and tomorrow, world leaders are going to be talking about, in part, helping the developing world to comply with new climate change standards, to help participate in a global recovery. How do you, when there are so many strains on domestic budgets in so many countries, this one included, how do you have your voice heard right now to make the argument that investing in Africa is possible through aid? It's not just charity at this point. It's actually in the best interest of the global economy.
The best way to look at Africa this time is to say, here's a land of 1 billion people, almost 40% of whom are living in the urban areas, a land of young people, young population. 60% of the populations are less than 25 years old. And so it is a continent for the future. And the best way to stimulate the global economy is a synchronized global approach, which does not leave out any part of the world. If we do stimulus only in rich countries, and leave out emerging economies and poor economies, it will be slower and not very effective. And therefore, investing in African infrastructure, for example, would be a solution both for OECD countries, but also for the poor countries. And so we're calling for a global, synchronized stimulus response, which includes investment in Africa in such domains as infrastructure, which are a win-win situation.
Your group makes loans, makes small local loans to individuals throughout the continent. What are you seeing in terms of demand right now? And where are you in terms of capitalization?
Listen, we do about $1.5 billion a year to private businesses across the continent. And we do about $3.5 billion lending to governments. Now, throughout this crisis, we have performed what is known as a counter-cyclical role, filling in gaps left by investments, retrenchments, or falling availability of finance. And so our commitments have increased almost 2.5 times. And so, assuming this crisis is drawn out, it is important that we raise additional resources to be able to respond in a manner which enables the economies not fall back.
How much are you looking for?
Look, at the last G20 in London, the Asian Development Bank, our colleagues in Asia, were able to secure a 200% increase in the capital base. And I think African needs are almost the same.
Okay.
And so I hope that we can secure a 200% increase in our capital base.
All right. Thank you so much for making time and for coming into our studios. That's Donald Kaberuka, president of the African Development Bank.